We begin abroad on the Atlantic Ocean, where the sea war involved action against one of the deadliest battleships in Hitler's Navy. She was the Graf Spee. This is the story of her life and her death.
It is 1939. The pocket battleship Admiral Graf Spee is the pride of Nazi Germany's Navy. Built to circumvent the Versailles Treaty, she combines a cruiser's mobility with a battleship's punch. In command of the Spee, Captain Sergei Hans Langsdorff, a capable graduate of the Kaiser's Navy. August 21st, 1939. The Graf Spee slips secretly out of Wilhelmshaven. Destination, the South Atlantic. War is imminent. The ship's orders read, be prepared to disrupt and destroy enemy shipping by all possible means. Heavily armored, equipped with 11-inch guns, the Spee carries 1,000 men, her own Arado seaplane, and can make 28 knots. Few warships in the world are her equal. With the help of a primitive radar, her orders are to avoid them. September 1st, war has begun. The disguised German supply ship Altmark rendezvous with the Spee. She bears the name Sonia and flies the Norwegian flag. The Graf Spee's position must be kept secret. She cannot go into any ports to refuel or pick up supplies. The Altmark's stores of food and fuel are vital to the mission of the big raider. As soon as she is supplied, the Graf Spee will head south, ready to raid. Even in wartime, the crossing of the equator means time out for the traditional King Neptune celebration.
Neptun, der Herr der Seen und Flüsse, der König aller Regengüsse. Euch sei's gesagt, ihr Rabenschweine, wir kriegen euren Dreck schon reine. Wir wollen euch kämmen und rasieren, die alten Zähne rausbuxieren. Wenn's Schiff ist sauber und piekfein, muss rein auch die Besatzung sein.
September 30th, the Spee sights her first victim, the British merchant ship Clement, 75 miles off the South American coast. To hide her identity, Spee now bears the name of her sister ship, the Admiral Scheer. Clement flashes the alarm, believes her attacker to be the Admiral Scheer. Using the Scheer's call letters, Langsdorff radios Brazil to pick up the Clement's lifeboats. The British Admiralty reacts quickly to the Clement's sinking. 8 hunter groups are formed. Included among them are Commodore Henry Harwood's old 8-inch cruiser Exeter and the light 6-inch cruiser Ajax. To the Graf Spee, smoke on the horizon can now mean a hunter as well as a victim. A few days after the Clement, the alarm signals another target. Attack now becomes a deadly routine. Approach head-on, flying the French tricolor, then wheel at the last instant and run up the German ensign. October 7th, Ashley. October 8th, Newton Beach. October November 17th, Huntsman. October 22nd, Trevannion. November 15th, Africa Shell. When survivors of the Africa Shell reveal Longsdorff's position in the Indian Ocean, he attempts to throw off his trackers by doubling back into the South Atlantic. In spite of Hitler's decision to torpedo without warning, Longsdorff not only warns the enemy before each attack, but has been taking prisoners as well. The Graf Spee is getting crowded. To mislead other ships further, the Spee is now disguised as a British man of war. After a coat of gray paint, a new dummy funnel, and a false gun turret have been added, Longsdorff is satisfied. He announces, "We shall look like the HMS Repulse." Her camouflage complete, Spee is again ready to strike. But days of monotonous patrolling go unrewarded. Everyone aboard, including Spee's 6 Chinese laundrymen, marks time with ordinary ship's routine. Finally, after 17 days, a distant silhouette, and Spee is back in business. December 2nd, Doric Star. December 3rd, Tarawa. December 7th, Stronshaw. The bag is growing, but Spee's day of reckoning lies ahead. Early December 1939, British Commodore Harwood, guided by the pattern of Spee's sinkings, moves Ajax, Exeter, and the New Zealand cruiser Achilles toward the Uruguayan coast. He suspects the raider is bound for the rich shipping lanes out of the River Plate, which feeds Montevideo and Buenos Aires. The Commodore knows that if the raider is a pocket battleship, he is badly outgunned. Harwood's guess about Spee's destination is right. Longsdorff has set course for the River Plate. Dawn December 13th, the Graf Spee sights another victim. Longsdorff moves in for the kill. A closer look convinces him he has sighted a British cruiser and 2 destroyers, presumably guarding a convoy. An easy score for a pocket battleship. Too late, Longsdorff discovers his alarming mistake. All 3 ships are cruisers and faster than Spee. Friedrich Wilhelm Rosenach, gunnery officer aboard the Graf Spee, recalls that moment.
Captain Longsdorff didn't want any battle. It wasn't his job. On the River Plate, he wanted to attack and destroy a convoy. But after sighting the enemy warships, he could not avoid the fight because of his much slower speed.
The skipper of the British cruiser Exeter describes the scene that morning to CBS News correspondent Alexander Kendrick. Captain Frederick S. Bell.
On the morning of the 13th, when daylight came and it was perfectly clear, calm, maximum visibility, you could see for miles, 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 there wasn't a thing in sight, nothing. And then we saw, away to port, we saw this smoke on the horizon. We thought it was a merchant ship. And so did Commodore Harwood. He thought the same. In fact, he started to make a signal to me, telling me to close the merchant ship and put my mails on board for South Africa. I didn't really think that we were going to have any luck that day at all. And I was lying on my bunk and reading a book. And the principal control officer buzzed my buzzer, which was a thing he'd never done before. He just merely called me down the voice pipe if he wanted me, and I knew it was an emergency. And he merely said, Captain, sir, I think the Admiral Scheer is on our port beam. So up I went, and there was this smoke which we had sighted. When I saw the Graf Spee, I said, well, that's it. We've had it. I'd always imagined in my mind that a pocket battleship against a very old 8-inch cruiser There was only one result could possibly be, and I sort of said to myself, well, thank God, the sea's calm and the water's warm. I can always swim for a bit.
At 6:17 a.m., the Graf Spee opens fire. Gunnery officer on the Ajax was Lieutenant, now Rear Admiral, Desmond P. Dreyer.
I think Captain Lansdorf made one important mistake in not concentrating his fire more. He started, I think, firing at the Ajax, and then he appreciated that the Exeter was a larger ship and transferred to her. And then he divided his fire, one turret at the Exeter and one at the Ajax. And then he later put both turrets onto the Exeter, but if he'd concentrated on the Exeter, he might have put her out of action quite soon, and so avoided being hit by her. In fact, I think the Exeter scored several good hits, and with her 8-inch shell, these would have caused quite a lot of damage.
The Spee's gunnery officer, Rassenau.
In the beginning, he had good luck crippling the most dangerous enemy, the heavy cruiser Exeter, by shell wounds. Later on, we damaged the smaller cruisers too, but were badly hit ourselves by the concentrated fire of the 3 ships. We had 36 casualties, but were still in fighting condition. He was very confident. At the beginning of the trial, he said, "We will eat them up," not knowing that there was a whole squadron against him.
She found she was up against something quite different to what she had imagined, because don't forget that while all this was happening to me, the Ajax and the Achilles were having quite a nice little time by themselves and getting quite a lot of hits on her.
We were hit twice in the Ajax. One 11-inch shell went through the mainmast and brought down the main topmast, and another 11-inch shell went into one of the 6-inch turrets and destroyed that, and also damaged another one with a splinter so that it was jammed. So the 2 of our 4 6-inch turrets were out of action. The Exeter was the one, of course, who suffered the most damage. She had 8 or 9 hits and was really completely disabled by the end of the action.
At 6:37 a.m., when the light is good, Ajax decides to send her spotter plane up to help direct fire. The pilot tells Alexander Kendrick what it was like. Edgar D.G. Lewin.
I think it was the first time that an airplane had been catapulted while the main armament of the ship was actually engaged. And the captain made it very clear to me that if I could get off, I was welcome, but he wasn't going to stop firing. And the launch was a bit exciting because the nearest guns, in fact, were only 6 feet away from the aircraft when we were catapulted, but we got off all right. We could see quite a lot of hits on the Spee. They weren't too obvious. One had to look very hard. They were just tiny little points of fire, which dotted out all over the Spee from time to time. And I tried to keep a running tally and reckoned there were between 50 and 60 of them. In fact, because the Spee was very heavily armored and we only had 6-inch shells, the majority of these bounced off back into the sea, but enough of them penetrated to do the damage. The battle really was just ding-dong for over an hour while we were watching it. It ended in, from our place of vantage, in a rather comic manner, because both sides apparently concluded simultaneously that for some reason or another they'd had enough. And they both started making a great deal of smoke simultaneously, and they both turned right away from each other and steamed at full speed away from each other for quite some time. Then Spee steadied down, and appeared to be steering towards the South American coast. And Ajax and Achilles turned round to follow her just outside the range of the Spee's main armament.
On the advice of his navigating officer, Langsdorff puts into Montevideo, Uruguay. He has surveyed the damage, has concluded his ship is not seaworthy. At 50 minutes past midnight, Spee is at anchor. One adversary, Exeter, badly hurt, withdraws to the Falkland Islands. Achilles and Ajax are patrolling the harbor entrance. In the morning, the full extent of Spee's damage is tallied. Her galley is a complete wreck. Her conning tower and airplane badly damaged. Most searchlights useless, and worst of all, she has at least 6 leaks below the waterline. Langsdorff learns that the repairs will take 2 weeks. He also knows that under international law, a belligerent warship in a neutral port can be interned after 24 hours. The crowd on shore is more curious than sympathetic. The German ambassador will call the retreat to Montevideo instead of friendlier Buenos Aires a mistake. Spee's 57 wounded and her British prisoners are taken ashore. Also coming ashore to ask more time for repairs is Langsdorff in the center. Shipyard workers say we won't work for Hitler, but Langsdorff gets an additional 72 hours from Uruguay's foreign minister, Dr. Alberto Guani at Wright. To make the Germans believe in our motto awaits Spee, British Minister Eugene Millington Drake first demands immediate departure or internment. Then he changes tactics, delay, keep the Spee in port until reinforcements arrive.
Early the next day, I was told to do anything I could for her to stay in, to keep her in. It was rather difficult. I went to the foreign minister, Dr. Guani, who was an old friend of mine, and when I handed him a note to say that a British merchantman was sailing at 18 o'clock that evening, so that by international law, the Graf Spee could not sail for 24 hours, you can imagine that he raised an eyebrow and said, surely this is a considerable change. And I had to admit that it was. Let me explain that there is a cat and mouse rule by the Hague Convention that if a warship of one side is in a harbor and a merchantman of the other is in that harbor and sails, the warship is not allowed to go for another 24 hours.
On December 15th, barges bring the Graf Spee's dead ashore for burial. 37 of her officers and men have been killed in the battle. Captain Langsdorff accompanies the cortege. Although the British losses, too, have been severe, some of Langsdorff's former British prisoners attend the German funeral. As others raise their arms in the Nazi salute, Langsdorff pointedly touches his cap in the old naval salute. By December 16th, the false British rumors have so deceived Langsdorff, he radios Berlin that a blockade awaits him and that it includes the carrier Ark Royal and the battle cruiser Renown. He asks, shall he fight his way through to Buenos Aires, scuttle, or be interned? Meanwhile, British Minister Millington Drake continues his diplomatic maneuvering.
On the Saturday, the third day, I went again, after several other interviews, to say that a merchantman was sailing that night. And once again, Dr. Guani looked at me with a quizzical smile and said, yes, yes. And then he was humorous at first, but then he burst out, became quite serious. And he said, but don't you sail another ship. That's all right, but we want to get rid of the Graf Spee as soon as we can. And if you sail another ship tomorrow, that will give her the excuse for staying another 24 hours. And I was obliged to say, in view that he'd been helpful, that we would take note of his request.
December 17th, Guani refuses to extend the time limit, and the German High Command radios Langsdorff no internment. He will have to fight his way through or scuttle. At 2 in the afternoon, the German merchant ship Tacoma pulls alongside. For 2 hours, boatloads of sailors are taken off the Spee. At 5:10 p.m., the Spey weighs anchor and heads toward the open sea. The gathering crowd wonders, will she fight her way through with a skeleton crew? Among the observers, Millington Drake.
I went to the 18th floor of the only skyscraper in Montevideo in those days, and we saw her majestically going out on this calm evening, and she moved out, and the psychological moment was when she got to the buoy where the ships turn westward to Buenos Aires, whether she'd go that way or the other way. And she did turn westward towards Buenos Aires, but went very little way and then hove to. And then we all began to wonder what was going to happen. And there was a break of about 20 minutes. At 54, there was a very small explosion which sounded like a gun when the sound reached us. A moment later, there was this huge explosion, and the thing was on fire from stem to stern in a very short moment. And, well, like this vast crowd of 300,000 people were watching this from every conceivable vantage point, making a hell of a row, shouting, and the radios going full blast. The excitement was like a football match.
After a 20-hour trip up the River Plate, the crew of what Longsdorff now calls the sunken ship Graf Spee arrives in Buenos Aires. At first, both captain and crew are warmly received, but Longsdorff soon finds himself attacked as a coward in some of the local press for not having chosen to die with his ship. After failing to prevent his crew's internment, he assembles them and says goodbye. Sometime after midnight, in his room at the Naval Arsenal, Longsdorff wraps himself in a German flag, not the swastika of the Third Reich, but an ensign of the old Imperial German Navy, and shoots himself in the forehead. In a letter written before his suicide, he explains that he had postponed his death only until his responsibility to his crew had been fulfilled. 100,000 people attend his funeral. Racked by explosions, gutted by fire, the battleship Graf Spee settles slowly into the gray mud of the River Plate. Scuttled in waters too shallow for sinking, she will burn for days, brightening some of the darkest days in that first winter of the war. The British have accomplished their mission to get the Graf Spee.